Hey everybody, welcome back to All Fiction is Fantasy. I'm going to have a really hard time not saying welcome back to the Dungeon Dive on these videos for this channel. But yeah, or welcome to, this is the first new review for this book channel. And today we are going to be taking a look at two novelizations. And that is the novelization of Poltergeist. And this was published in 1982, written by James Kahn. Based on a story from Steven Spielberg and a screenplay by Steven Spielberg, Michael Grays, and Mark Victor. And we're also going to be taking a look at Poltergeist II, also written by James Kahn. And that is from a screenplay, based on a screenplay by Michael Grace and Mark Victor. So when's the last time you've read a novelization? Those novelizations seem to have been really popular in like the 80s and maybe up through the 90s. And I kind of miss them. And I don't know if it's a dying art form. I don't know if it's a dead art form. I haven't looked at any modern novelizations. Maybe I should, especially based on how much I liked these. But a little bit of backstory. So growing up, my parents were pretty strict on like what movies I could watch as a kid. I didn't see a lot of rated R movies growing up, and I didn't see a lot of horror movies as a kid. However, they didn't really care about what books I read. So I read quite a few novelizations as a kid. And this was how I was able to talk to other kids at school who had seen like the popular movies that I wasn't allowed to see. And then when I finally got around to seeing the movies of the books that I had read, I realized that the books had all kinds of additional things in them. I would later learn, of course, that the novelizations were often based on the full unedited script or screenplay. So they were kind of like experiencing special editions or director's cuts of the movies. In 1983, I of course did see Return of the Jedi. My parents, we ditched school. We played hooky from school that day to go see the movie, and I loved it, and I still do. But I also had the novelization of that movie. And this was another really cool benefit of that kind of book. You know, this was before the time when we had really easy access to all the movies and shows that we wanted to watch at home. And so if I wanted to revisit the movie, I had to read the book. And I had the book and I read it over and over again. It was one of my most read books as a kid. So fast forward to October 2022. I'm planning the books that I want to read for the Halloween season. And I put together a top 10 list of horror movies. And for those of you who listen to that podcast, I revealed that Poltergeist is my favorite horror movie of all time. I love that movie to death. I think it is one of the few perfect movies. So I was putting together some books that I wanted to read, and I decided I wanted to check out the novelization of Poltergeist, so I bought it. And it turns out that it's actually written by the same author who wrote the novelization for Return of the Jedi, and that is James Kahn. Turns out also he wrote the novelization for Poltergeist II. So while I decided to pick that up as well and read that after reading and absolutely loving Poltergeist 1. So both of the novelizations for Poltergeist 1 and 2 are excellent works of horror fiction that easily stand alone from the movies on which they are based. I think Kahn is a very good writer. I wouldn't say that he has a specific style, but he has a good kind of workman-like style. He gets the job done and does it well. I think he did an amazing job of capturing the essence of each film, while also diving deeper into the characterizations of the Freeling family and the strange paranormal circumstances that surround them. So Poltergeist 1, the Poltergeist 1 novelization, is actually quite a bit different from the movie. It has a lot of additional scenes. And most of these additional scenes and sequences revolve around Tangina, the little psychic lady that everybody loves with her little squeaky voice. The psychic dwarf, as it calls her in the book. But she plays a much more active and heroic role, and I love that. She thinks of her powers as a curse. she can't go to sleep without dreaming of some kind of clairvoyant or paranormal thing. She's constantly being hounded by the spirit world, and she wants to rid herself of that curse. And so she visits the Dr. Lesh, the head of the paranormal research group in the movie, and to try to get rid of her clairvoyant powers. And so she goes to sleep and she has a psychic episode. And Tangina receives a premonition that young Carol Ann is in trouble. And she wakes up just absolutely distraught, beside herself. And she needs to convince Lesh that they need to find Carol Ann. They need to find the Freeling family and help them. And so she convinces the paranormal psychic team to hook her brains up to all these machines. I get this feeling that she looks like some kind of a like cybernetic, kind of cyberpunk thing out of Akira or something. And so they hook her up to all these machines with all these readouts, and they put that in a van and they drive around the city while she is trying to triangulate Carol Ann and find the Freeling home. And that is so cool. It is such a neat moment in the book that is not in the movie. And I love that it is in the book. Just an amazing sequence. It's kind of like straight out of Ghostbusters. And I don't know. It feels straight out of Ghostbusters. And this was, I think, the same year or a year before Ghostbusters. And then there are also extended sequences where Tangina is in the spirit realm doing psychic battle against the beast, the ultimate evil. At one point, she turns into vapor, and the beast inhales her and sucks her into its lungs, and she's like trapped in its lungs, suffocating. And so she has to make her particles smaller so that she can seep through the beast's inner organs and through its skin. And in doing so, she marks the beast to where she can pinpoint where it is in the spirit realm, so she can return to it later to finish the epic battle. And all of these psychic battle scenes would have looked probably pretty bad on screen and would have cost a small fortune in 1983 special effects budget. So I totally get why they were cut for from the film, because they work in the book, but they don't work in the movie. And that's what I like to see in a novelization or even in adaptation, is certain things work on the printed page and they don't work on screen. More time is also spent with the lore of the spirit world. Tangina gives names to some of the entities, and it also gives them a purpose and a meaning. And it's all wonderfully written, endlessly entertaining, and I really did love every single page. I'm going to read a passage here. So this is during like one of the first nights where the paranormal team is at the Freeling home, and all kinds of paranormal activities going on, and they're documenting it and watching it. In the living room, the flame and shadow circled the tree while people watched enwrapped. All at once, a low snarling sound attracted everyone's attention to the hallway. In the darkness, there, a figure was approaching. The tree, flame, and shadow beings saw it at the same time and appeared to go into a frenzy. The flame leaped into the shadow and was gone. The shadow engulfed the tree, which disappeared, and the shadow sailed up the stairwell and vanished into the shadows. Lesh and the others stared at the hallway where the shape was coming closer. It rapidly emerged into the half-light of the television glare. There, naked, slobbering, waddling like an orangutan, was Marty, back from metamorphosis. Marty, when he reached the group, stood erect and looked confused. "Why is everyone staring at me?" he demanded. Before everyone could give an answer, something magnificent happened. The most magnificent happening of all the strange and awful night. A woman appeared on the stairs. That's really good. That's really good writing for a haunted house episode. Kahn does a great job of capturing the love of the Freeling family and really dives into that theme of the story. And he also does a little better job of showing how Diane is thrust more into the role of a hero, and how Stephen is pushed out a bit, and how this sets up his character for part 2. The spirits in the book are also a little more malevolent in how they treat Diane in a couple of scenes. It's nothing too scandalous, But I imagine that this, along with some of the scares, would have pushed the film into more rated R territory. And the first PG-13 movie was about a year off, and so I think they kind of had to tone back the malevolence a bit to get that PG rating. As an aside, one of the first movies that triggered the need for a rating between PG and R was Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, which James Kahn also wrote the novelization for. And I have that coming along with his novelization for The Goonies. So I'm going to review both of those coming up soon. But the book has a lot of additions, but I get why they were cut from the film. And I don't think the movie would have been better with any of those additions. But I'm happy that they're in the book because it makes the book really exciting and kind of new and novel. It gives the book a little more of its own personality. I still like the movie more, but the book is great, and I highly recommend it for fans of haunted house stories. Conversely, Poltergeist 2, of course, also written by James Kahn, doesn't contain as many differences from its film counterpart. It's more true to the shooting script of the movie, but I like the movie more than the film. It provides a deeper characterization of Stephen and his struggles with low self-esteem after he blames himself for his family's predicament. At the end of the first story, the family has lost everything. They've lost their home. They have to move across the country. They move in with Diane's mother. Stephen is at rock bottom, and he turns to alcohol to help cope. And he is genuinely struggling with his perceived failures as the man of the Freeling household. So Poltergeist 2 does veer into some questionable territory with its treatment of Native American myth, legend, folklore, and people. But I don't think it was done with a derogatory sense. It wasn't cheap or lazy. Poltergeist 2 adds more backstory to the entire saga, and in doing so, it reveals the history of the haunting evil, tracing its legacy back to the early days of the American Southwest. One of the two new main characters is a man named Taylor, who is a tribal leader. And he's also kind of a cliche medicine man, complete with a medicine pouch, feather totems, and the ability to be one and converse with nature. However, he is mostly treated with respect. I think the character is well written, and he's not simply a magical minority for the white people to turn to, even though he ends up kind of being that. He is more. He feels like a real character with substance. And I believe that I got the sense that his character was actually kind of playing up that stereotype to feed into the cliche, to feed into the perceived stereotypes of the white family. I think he was kind of in on the joke. Maybe I'm giving the author, maybe I'm giving the original story too much credit there, but that's how I felt reading it. I never felt like it was done in a mean-spirited or lazy nature. As far as the core story of Poltergeist 2 goes, I actually think the plot is actually better than Poltergeist 1, in that it has more backstory. It has more of a reason for the haunting. And that reason is personified by the evil Reverend Henry Kane. It's impossible not to picture the actor Julian Beck when reading the novel, but I'm really grateful for that image because Julian Beck's portrayal of Kane is so good in the movie. Kane was a leader of a religious cult many generations ago, and he forced his cult to commit ritual suicide in a location that would later be the site for the housing development Cuesta Verde that Stephen worked on directly below the Freelings' old home. Taylor works with the Freelings and especially with Stephen, strengthening his position in the family, training them to stand up to the evil hauntings, which get more and more dangerous. This culminates in a fantastic showdown on the other side, hence the name Poltergeist 2, The Other Side, and ends with a moment kind of pure out of movie sappiness, where the spirit of Diane's recently deceased mother comes out of nowhere to save Carol Ann. It's a bit cheesy, but I think it works in relation to the theme of the family bonds of the movie. And of course, who can forget the great sequence where Steven drinks the tequila, swallows the worm, and then the worm, let's read about it here. And he says, he stopped cold, as if he'd been hit by a hammer. She said it again. I do. I love you. Believe me. This is Diane and Steven talking. His face turned pale. His body began to shake. Her love grew stronger with concern. Steven, Steven. Oh God, what's the matter with you? What is it, honey? He was convulsing violently, still standing up. He pushed her away, fear on his face. He gagged once and jolted forward, bent over as if he were going to vomit. He gagged again. His mouth opened, and it began to come out. A thick, translucent, gelatinous, snake-like thing started slithering from his mouth. Diane screamed and backed off. The thing kept coming, writhing, dripping mucus, grayish pink, thick as an arm at first, then bursting with knobbly, tumorous lumps the longer it grew, like a deformed embryo pulsing the size of a small dog by the time it extruded completely on the carpet. Steve collapsed in a heap as the thing wriggled under the bed. The trail of slime it left behind smoked like an acid pit. Under the bed, it visibly began to grow. Diane knelt beside Steve, trying to revive him. The puddle of ooze where the thing had first been spit up smelled so foul it made her gag. She pulled Steve away a couple of feet and shook him. Steven! Steven! Wake up! The thing crawled out from under the bed. It was twice as big now, like a huge mutant fetus. Bloated, viscous chest, its ribs exposed and dripping matter. Tiny flipper-like arms, a torso that tapered off to no legs at all, but a slippery, malformed, stubby tail, and a head that was nearly human, with eyes like canes, a decayed nose hole, a drooling smile, a rotted brain tissue spilling down its forehead, a face of primitive evil. That's really good writing. That's really good horror writing. James Kahn is a very interesting man. He has a website. I'll post a link to it. He writes and performs music. He has written his own series of fantasy novels. I'm kind of interested in them. I think I might look into them and read them. I did like his writing, and I loved these. Both of these novels are fantastic. If you can find them they usually go for about $20 a piece. Some of these old novelizations have gotten really expensive, especially the ones for the big horror franchises like Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Friday the 13th. Those are very expensive. I would love to read them. If anybody wants to donate them to the channel, I will gladly take them off your hands. But yeah, I highly recommend the novelizations of Poltergeist 1 and 2 by James Kahn. And I'm very much looking forward to reading Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom and The Goonies. So, all right, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed this review. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.